If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die
The
for.
family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to
I'm talking
die
about
for.
tribal self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yes, I'm born.
Let's get started, y'all. Let's go and take off. So we're back. This is your Panther 48, and we're back. We're back to go over the non-local objectives, and we have our last three. If you watched our other videos, and you should, and if you haven't, you should go back and check out from 1 through 6 we've done already. Today we're going to get the last three, 7, 8, and 9, and starting with 7 is to defend Black rights in general. We shall struggle and organize against all forms of racism and discrimination against Black people in the region, local, state, and federal government racism, corporate racism, consumer racism, police discrimination, housing discrimination, and racist discrimination in general. The Black Panther Party is the vigilant defender of Black people's divine, human, and legal rights. To this end, we work and call on Black legal organizations, attorneys, Black activists, pastors, preachers, churches, organizations, and leadership of every Black stripe to join with us against the evils of racism, inequality, and injustice. Now that, to me, that was a lot. A lot was just said right there. And let me put it on the screen so we can really look at it. Now that was a lot, I think I just read. And I think that to really get into the meat of this, it's a few words in here, a few terms in here that I think we really need to break down. And I already know, E, you're tired of breaking down this stuff for the last 30 years, but we have to get into the details of this because we use the word racism a lot, discrimination. We use these terms, and I think we need to get into, we need to build, we need to define, develop, and defend some of these things in here. Like racism, I think needs to be defined. Discrimination, I think needs to be defined. We need to understand it because we say racism, then we turn around and we say government racism, corporate racism, consumer racism, police discrimination. A lot of people will see these words and be like, discrimination, racism, they're the same things. What separates corporate racism from consumer racism? What does all of this mean? Because that's why I say it's real heady, and I think we need to really get into it and build on it. So I'm going to open the mic up and let War start out first, and I think it's going to take a little bit of all of us to get into this, chop this up, break it down, and analyze it, and then put it back together. War, it's on you.
Well, to me, it just goes into, as a Panther, what we're doing is getting people to really see all of the different forms of attack that are taking place and how the people are under attack. And so the idea here is when you say defending Black rights in general, it's getting the people to see how we're being attacked. We all realize overall that we're being oppressed, but the ways in which we're being oppressed and how we're being attacked and how we're being dumbed down, how we're being basically channeled to be inferior and to maintain that inferior position is the point we're hitting at, is that there has to be a general level of defiance that us as a people know that we must do. Because when you talk about what I refer to as outpacing pace of oppression, they're gonna keep poking at you. They're gonna keep poking at that burr. The name of the game is to make sure that the Black people remain inferior in terms of their activity, in terms of their thought, in terms of their ability to connect culture or even have a culture. And you want to keep them systematically oppressed in a position of always being docile, always being realizing that they're going to be attacked, but take the attack. They're going to be pushed under the rug, but take it. They're going to be cut down, but take it. They want us to maintain the victimization and victimhood mentality. So that's why it starts out saying we shall struggle, because the thing is, we shouldn't allow it to just be maintained that we're going to stay under attack. We have to start calling out these various ways in which we're being attacked, and we have to start actually doing something about it. We actually have to start letting people know, hey, when they said this, or when they do this, or when they do that, that's an actual attack. It even goes back to what I say all the time, that getting the people to realize that we are on a battlefield. Because right now, if I don't look at myself as being in a war with society, and don't see that everything that they're doing is actually meant to attack and destroy me and to keep me in a certain place of inferiority. If I don't realize that right off the bat, then I don't recognize that I am being attacked. So we have to call out. So when we say defending Black rights in general, is by saying general is saying that all of these different things here are what's being done to attack us. And we need to make sure that systematically we are addressing and that we are being proactive about calling out all of these attacks and identifying them as attacks and actually getting our people in the right mind frame to not take it. And that kind of even spills into an early conversation we were all having in regards to the corporate environment. Because if I, as a Black person, just accept the fact that I'm going to be oppressed, and I get used to accepting that, then it actually weakens my position of being able to attack, challenge it, and make things different. Because I just accept the fact that I'm going to stay things are going to be this way. And that goes into what we say when we say coping. The difference between coping and actually taking an active kinetic role against fighting oppression. If I'm coping, that means that I'm just going to accept the fact that things are happening, and I'm going to learn how to navigate over these obstacles, around these obstacles, through these obstacles, but I'm not going to change the fact that these are obstacles. I'm going to let them remain out there so that the next person behind me has to go through the same set of challenges. We can't continue to live our life as through a means of coping. We have to actually make progressive change. When Dr. Khalid Abdul-Muhammad used to say, revolution is complete constructive change, he referred to the fact that we have to be able to rid ourselves of these environments that are constantly keeping us in a position. That's why it was saying constructive change. If we're not actually making change, all we're doing is coping. So in opening it up for the both of y'all to jump in on, it's just simply calling out the fact that all of these different things and aspects of attack are taking place, and we need to get our people to see that.
Question. I'm the average person. I stumbled across the Panther 48 YouTube channel today. I see this number 7, to defend Black rights in general. What is Black rights? What is that? I mean, what rights do Black people have in this society? What is that? What does that mean? Black rights in general.
It's just a good idea.
Break that down to me. Help me understand it. You said that the fact that we have, or the thought of us having rights in this society is just a good idea, because in reality we don't really have any rights. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, because we talked about it before. Rights are the only rights you have are the ones that you can defend, are the ones that you can make so. And we are not able to do any of that. We talk about racism being a system, white supremacy being a system. We so confused. We can't differentiate. If I say that, white people are such and such, folks will jump up quick and say, well, no, because I know some white people that did da 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 da, and that's fine and good. But racism has nothing to do with those individuals that did da 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 da. Racism is not somebody white calling you a nigger. That's not racism. Racism is a system that involves groups of people, and we don't identify as a group of people. We identify as individuals. Why? Because we've been sold this bullshit that individual rights are the thing. Individual rights, private property, all of that type of shit are what are necessary. And so we identify, just like capitalism is the economic expression of racism, white supremacy. The individual is the cultural expression of racism, white supremacy. Capitalism is the economic expression of racism, white supremacy. The individual is the cultural expression of racism, white supremacy. It's the idea of taking a particular point of view, a worldview, and forcing others to live by it. You know, that's their perspective. They believe that the individual is the almighty. We understood that my individual existence is absolutely and inseparable from the collective existence. We understood the indivisible duality of the individual. These people do not. It only exists on the surface level. And as long as it's like a basketball team, if everybody's trying to get a scoring record, you're not going to have a very successful team. You might have somebody that hits a bunch of numbers, but the team itself isn't going to do very well because everybody's fighting each other for themselves instead of putting the greater good, a championship, in the forefront and acting as a team. And we do not act as a collective because we perceive each other as individuals. So we get these meaningless little individual rights and want to argue with somebody who has a bigger stick about exercising those individual rights. Yeah, you can talk back. You don't have to tell the police shit when they pull you over and ask you for your name. If they're not being detained, blah, blah, blah. See videos all the time of cats saying, well, I'm not going to tell you. I don't answer questions. But the reality of it is, this is where the rules come in. They are much more able to change the rules in those types of situations. And it's come to a point where those individual rights that we've been taught to yell and scream and huff and puff about are what they will use to further enslave us. It's going to be a point where refusing to identify yourself is an excuse to suspect you of being here illegally, and they will swoop you up and you will disappear. And so this individual rights is counter to our reality. It does not compute for us at all. And so until we realize that Black is a collective, that is a group, it is a group dynamic that we have to feed into. My existence as a so-called individual is completely dependent on the group's success. And the group's success is dependent on me realizing that as an individual and feeding into that. So any rights that we have or don't have or want or whatever have to be defensible. And we can't defend anything. So the reality of it is, you can go spend your money however you want, but you have no rights because they'll just change the rules and you have nothing to fall back on. You know, it's like when the Palestinian protesters, or even the Latinos or whatever they call themselves now, when they push back, they have somebody, they especially Palestinians, they have a way to pay their bail to get out of jail. They have a way to hire an attorney, probably get free representation from attorneys, especially in the Palestinian community. They have some type of cultural system, a network, a process in place to provide for those soldiers that go out on the front line. All we got is bravado, big dicks and pistols. That's it. That's all we got. And this system is very well prepared to deal with that. And so there are no rights that we have that we can speak of. We can chat about it and say, this is where it should be, it ought to be. But until we actually make it so, initially, by rejecting their concept of the individual, study who it is we are, research who it is we are, and realize that we are a collective, then none of those talked about rights even matter. Used to have a right not to get picked up and whisked away. Well, no, we ain't never had that right. Oops. It's been that way for us since we got here. So now that bluster we talk about, you know, I have rights, you can't do this to me. Oh yeah, they can. They've been doing it this whole fucking time. Nothing has changed. Whether it's the slave catcher or it's ICE, it's the same shit. But we're too caught up in the pursuit of individual freedoms and rights and all that bullshit they said, because it ain't never existed, but they said. We're so caught up and have bought into their concept of the individual, of death, of reality. And until we approach those, all of these symptoms that we have listed, and that's what they are. Discrimination is a symptom. Everybody discriminates. I discriminated this morning. Should I have eggs or should I have toast? Discrimination is just a decision between two or more things. What is it you're making a decision about? What is it based on? That's the problem. And where it applies is that the discrimination is being made to choose between this group of people, that group of people, this worldview, that worldview, this concept or that concept. And so and we're just so blinded by the desire to pursue this individual reality that we're at the point that these other groups, again, Palestinians and the Latinos and all the stuff that they got going on, they can exercise a collective reality. We can't. We can't. We have African Liberation Day, and there are more non-Africans at that shit than there are Africans. That's a problem. That's a problem that has to be addressed before anything else. You can't afford, as an organization, to rent your own spot for an event or a holiday or whatever that you yourself, as an organization, instituted, created, came up with. This is your shit. But you can't afford to rent a space to have an event for it without importing some other motherfuckers. That is a position of weakness. That is a position of a slave. That is a position that we have to make a priority to work ourselves out of. And the submission of our individual egos, we need to understand what egos are, what they do, what they don't do, so that we better submit ourselves to something bigger than ourselves. That's that's our concept of God, but not theirs.
Well, I want to give a technical definition of rights. The word rights, and that's what I was about to say for E cut me off, is that I want people to listen to these definitions and then ask themselves, because E said it's a nice thing to have or a nice ideal, And one of the things we have to understand, I think you have to understand, if you consider yourself to be politically conscious in any society, is that some ideals are placed out in front of you as Novocaine. They're placed out in front of you to make you believe you have a choice, because people are more likely to submit to being enslaved if they think they have a choice than they are if you just straight up tell them you ain't got no choice, you're gonna do this and that's it. But when I give you a choice between the two things that I want you to do, you have to ask yourself, is that really a choice? But listen to the definition of these rights. Rights are legal, social, or ethical entitlements or freedoms that are due to individuals. Legal, social, or ethical entitlements or freedoms that are due to individuals. They are fundamental principles defining what is allowed or owed to people within a specific legal system, social convention, or ethical theory. Rights can be broadly categorized into natural rights, moral rights, and legal rights. Natural rights, you can call them human rights. That's one of the things that Malcolm was real deep on before he was assassinated, is Malcolm had got past the civil rights, which is the legal rights. He got past the civil rights and started thinking to himself, we need to start dealing with this thing from a higher level, from a bird's eye view. We need to look at it from human rights. And where Malcolm got that from is that Malcolm, you got to keep in mind that Malcolm took a trip to Africa and the Middle East. He took a trip to the UN Assembly, and Malcolm had learned about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that a document adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1948 that outlines the fundamental human rights that are universally protected. It serves as the foundation for international human rights law. So that's what Malcolm had learned, and he was trying to force that or push that concept, therefore forcing the UN to defend Black people's natural human rights in this country. He believed that if he could get the UN to stand behind Black people and push the defending of their human rights, that they would automatically get their legal rights or their civil rights. But that's where Malcolm started building on those concepts. And I'm gonna give the listening audience a quick elaboration. The natural rights. These are the rights that are believed to be inherent to human beings and not granted by any government or institution. Examples include the right to life and liberty. Those are examples. You have a right to be alive if you was born. Somebody else shouldn't kill you. That's the concept behind life and liberty. And liberty means that you have the right to be free. You have the right, no one should take you and chain you or lock you in a room or lock you in a box or even lock you in a cell. Now, those listening to that might think to yourself, if that's true, then how can people go to prison? Because in the social convention, they're stating that if you violate somebody else's right, then your violation of their right is you committing a crime. By committing the crime, you break the social convention, and therefore you forfeit your natural human right, which kind of goes against the definition. It says that cannot be granted by any government or institution. And if you can't grant it, you don't have the right to take it away when you really think about that. But moral rights means these are the rights that are based on moral principles and values. They often relate to what is considered right or wrong behavior within a society. Those are moral rights, and that's something that we probably could end up building on later if we had the time. And the last is the legal rights, or what they call civil rights. Legal rights, these are the rights that are recognized and protected by law. They can be further categorized into fundamental rights, political rights, and social civil rights. Examples of these rights are freedom of speech, the right to express oneself without fear of censorship or reprisal, right to vote, the right to participate in the democratic process by choosing representatives, the right to privacy, the right to control one's personal information and keep it confidential, right to a fair trial, the right to have a public and impartial hearing before a competent court, and the right to freedom of religion, the right to practice or not practice any religion without interference from the state. So these are the various ways that they break down our quote unquote rights. But one of the things that any citizen has to understand is that when you live in any society, when you live under a state, when you live under a government, then all of your rights have been defined and controlled by government, even the ones that they say are natural rights that no government should have any power over. Government defines and controls your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Government has the right. Government is the only legal entity in this society that can legally kill you. Once the government gives you death row and gives you the death sentence, the government is the institution that can legally kill you. The government is the institution that can legally, by law, send you to another country to kill other people, and it not be a crime. So the government can take away your right to life, and they can activate you to go somewhere else and take away another's right to life and the pursuit of happiness. This is one of the things that I think we have to think about. Anybody else want to build on that, on the rights? Because I wanted to ask somebody to give me a definition of discrimination. Well, he just gave it actually. He just actually kind of gave it a few minutes ago when he said that he discriminated this morning between whether or not he wanted to have eggs. I can't remember what he juxtaposed it against toast. So that's a discrimination, and discrimination is a form of thinking. Discrimination is a high level of thinking. I ain't gonna get into that here, but discrimination is a high level of thinking because you have to be able to discriminate. You have to be able to make a decision between what you think is best for you and what you think is not best for you. Racism, and I know we've given this definition a million times, and I'll give a quick one, a brief one. Racism, and one of the things that we've always heard, and this is, I think, bears digging deep into, racism is prejudice plus power. Racism is not just prejudice. I don't like this person because he's a Mexican, or because he's black, or because he's white, or because this person is a female, or whatever. Racism is prejudice plus power. It means that you're prejudiced. You prejudge a group of people because of their background, their ethnicity, or the color of their skin. And then you have the power to actually affect these people in the political arena, social arena, education arena, and economically. You have the ability to bring about a long-lasting effect against these people. Racism is a system, as E said earlier. It is a system. It is not a feeling. It is a system. Now they have to convince people, it's many white people that in the past and even now that side with racism, and racism itself hurts them. Racism does absolutely nothing for them. The only value, to paraphrase Martin Luther King, the only value that some of these poor whites get from racism is the ability just to be able to say, I'm white. I'm white. I'm not black. I'm white. That's it. That's all that come with it. Martin Luther King said that these same people, instead of fighting against us with the system, should be with us fighting against the system, because that same system is not benefiting them the same way it's not benefiting us. But racism is a system. When we see the word race and we see the word ism means a system of beliefs or ideals, like Buddhism, socialism, Confucianism, communism. You see the ism in there, and the word ism literally means a system of beliefs, ideals, a paradigm, a view that you see the world through. And the word race literally means to strive to be first. That's what the word means. You see people on the track and they're running because somebody wants to be first. Somebody wants to be the first one to cross the finish line. And Europeans sat down and they came up with this ideal called race. They divided people into five groups, and they defined these 5 groups by color. They say these 5 people was white, yellow, brown, red, and black. And they said that the lighter the group of people was, the more superior they were. And the darker they were, the more inferior they were. And based on this ideal, they said that it gave the lightest race what they called manifest destiny. This manifest destiny, since they was the superior, it was their job and responsibility to colonize the earth for the purpose of raising the other savage groups up, because they had the superiority to be able to do it. So it was their God-given right to take the land from the Native American. It was their God-given right to enslave the African, because the African soul was as dark as his skin, and by them enslaving him, they was able to introduce him to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and liberate him from his ignorance. So it was this manifest destiny because of them being born superior and the highs on the food chain to be able to do these. This is what the concept of racism is based off of, and that all of these different groups are racing for superiority, and it is the God-given right of all of these different groups to try to attempt to make themselves first. And this is the system that white people developed and spread all over the planet. Before this system, human beings were not called by the color of their skin or by colors. They was called by the land that they came from. So if you had this skin hue, you would automatically be called an African. If you had a white skin hue, you would be called a European, therefore and so on. So this is the change that Europeans made when they created this system of belief called racism. And this system, when we talk about racism, we're not fighting against individuals. This is what E was saying a few minutes ago. We're not fighting against individual white persons. What we're fighting against is a group system that was created by a group of white people. People is plural. Where that was created by a group of white. So if you know an individual white person, John Brown, that wanted to participate in the liberation of black people, it doesn't excuse the group, the white people that developed and created this system of racism. And I'm gonna leave with this one. Huey once explained, because he was asked, and let me try to remember this. He was asked once in an interview that what could well-meaning whites do in this liberation struggle? And the way Huey did it, he broke it down into four. He broke people down into four sections. He said that the black man was the ultra masculine menial. He said that the white man was the superior authority figure. He said that the black woman had been considered the ultra feminine freak, and that the white woman was I can't remember the name that he called her, but the ideal was that she was too pure for the white male's savage, lustful habits or desires. At least this is what he sold to her in order to justify him going into the slave quarters and raping the black woman. So in building on this, the way Huey broke these classifications down, he said that during slavery, the white man made all the decisions and he gave all the work to the black man. And by giving all the work to the black man basically started getting bigger. His muscles were developing. He was out there sweating. He was out there half naked, half dressed, sweat glistening off his black body. And the white man wasn't doing any work. So he was sitting on the porch drinking his lemonade, calling shots, giving demands, and he was getting fat. He was getting flabby. He wasn't working. He'd rarely sweat. So in the process, what ended up happening was he would look over and he would look out into the field and he would see all the black women admiring the black man because he was out here doing the physical labor. And he would see this and he noticed that when he went out to take what he thought was rightfully his from the black woman. They didn't have the same desire. Look at him. They were just being submissive, but they didn't have the desire to be with him. They just didn't want to be killed. And then he happened to turn around and look at the white women, and he noticed that they was looking at the black man in the exact same way. He noticed this, and he noticed that he wasn't getting these looks. So he felt the need to emasculate the black man. So he walked over to old Tom, and he told Tom, he said, "Tom, my penis is longer than yours." And Tom looked over at the white master and looked at himself, and he kind of smiled like, what's up with this guy? This guy is tripping. You know, there is no way your penis is longer than mine. And the master told him, what I mean by that is that my penis stretches farther than yours. And what this means is, see, me, I'm the master. I could have any woman I want. I can go out and I can get the black slave woman, and I can have the white woman. You could never have a white woman. Matter of fact, if you look at it the wrong way, I'll kill you. And you can only have the black woman when I'm not using her. So my penis is bigger than yours. This was a psychological castration. You know, and the way Hewitt broke it down is he explained that nowadays the black man is trying to get his mind back, because during slavery, he was allowed to keep his body, but he lost his mind. And the white man, he lost his body, but he kept his mind. So the black man in these days become a revolutionary, and he becomes a gorilla. And the way Huey explained it was that the gorilla was the perfect man, because the gorilla is the mind and the body. He's the political theoretician and the military fighter. He's both. He's learned how to balance himself out. And by balancing himself out, he has freed himself from that slavery and that racist ideology that the master had put on him during those slaves' times. And it's ironic, I said all this to say this, it's ironic, and he talked about it earlier when he talked about all we got is big penises and guns, is that we have so many that come into the movement and they still just want to be the body. They still only want to be the body. They still only want to do the physical maneuvers, the protesting, the carrying the guns, but they don't want to be the mind. And the mind is what's required. And I don't see how you could be a Panther and not understand it when Huey said that the gorilla is the perfect man, because he's both mind and body. He's the political theoretician and he's the military fighter. And that's how you start moving yourself out of racism, because you have to move yourself out of racism mentally before you can ever move yourself out of racism physically. But I wanted to get on that. Do y'all want to build any more on the to defend the black rights in general?
I'm good.
Okay,
I would
go ahead.
I would just say this, from my position anyway, and wrapping it up, is what you doing. If you read number 7, my problem is, and I'm not knocking the objectives. I get it. We've had this discussion. Blah blah blah. I get all that, but the reality of it is, the 3D. What's the first one? War.
Define. And what's the last one? Defend. So we are actually 2 steps away from the defend part, because we ain't defined shit. We can't figure out if we black, African Americans, more, all this other stuff. And now a new flavor, for me at least, is we're indigenous. We're not African. We from here. That's just a silly ass position to take up from where I'm standing anyway. So we're not, again, I always have to reflect on where it is we are in the process. We can't define who we are. So in reality, there's nothing to defend. We're stuck on the first D, trying to define. But yeah, defend is a good idea. All right, let's go to 8. Defend. I like that. Let's go to 8. We still need to define. I agree. That's why I wanted us to define racism, discrimination, and even rights, because we needed to define that. And looking into that, even for us so-called revolutionaries, a lot of times we don't know what none of those things mean. We've heard them. And you'll see it when you watch all this stuff on social media, when people get stopped and they be screaming, "I know my rights," and they don't even understand the ideal of what a right is. They don't understand the concept. So 8, we demand We demand local reparations and compensation. We affirm that the governments, corporations through colonialism have willfully, intentionally, and recklessly enslaved, discriminated against, robbed, and disenfranchised our people in countless and innumerable ways. War.
That's another good idea.
I would just simply start off where you left off when you talked about entitlements. When we approach things from the standpoint of entitlement as a human being, as opposed to just relegating things down to the level of entitlement through civil rights, we have to take it back to the human level. We have to recognize that as human beings all across the world, people are and peoples are receiving reparations and receiving compensation for the damages that have been done to them. Every time this comes up for Black people, then there's all of these different things and reasons why it can't be done. Not to say that as the basic premise goes that we would ever get the government to compensate us across the board. But what we must do as it applies to that, we must still actively work on following the money and using the systems they have in place against them to receive compensation at whatever level possible and at any operations possible to make them pay from the position of destroying and relegating our human rights. And I believe part of the problem goes into is like what Sykes said earlier when he was talking about dealing with the forms of discrimination and defining what rights are, and how the state has the right as a state to be able to commit the crimes or take a life. And that goes into the fact that we are citizens. We are classified as citizens under a state. So it is a state apparatus that holds the ultimate power. But at the same time, when you recognize that and you use that to your advantage, and you say even under your own laws of the state, you have committed crimes against the actual citizens that you represent and that you state have these rights, have these entitlements. But what happens is we accept positions of inferiority, we accept positions of oppression, we accept positions of dominance and slavery on modern day terms and levels. So even going into the back of defending Black rights in general and moving into reparations, the whole aspect of compensation and what we need to be teaching our people is that we have to control our own resources. We have to first recognize what resources are, have the right mindset and not have the renter's mentality, have the right mindset and realize the power of land, the power of being in control, the power of power, and operate through our positions of power. And by doing that, aspects of reparations and compensation come with our exercising of what it means to be in positions of power. Let's jump on.
It's still it's a good idea, like most, and it remains a good idea to me, because when someone demands, if you're making a demand, that implies a certain level of power. And the reality of it is, we've all had 2-year-old children, and at no point in time could any of those 2-year-old children come up and demand that we buy them a toy at the store. You can ask, you can plead and beg, but you can't demand, because if I don't do it, there are no consequences. That's what makes a demand, are the consequences. I demand you do this, or else something else is going to happen. And I'm not knocking the call. I like to say the call for reparations, but only in the sense of those consequences. So that it's like a dude or somebody in Sykes' house breaking Sykes' rules, and Sykes sit down, have a conversation with him, and they still break the rules. So he sit down, have another conversation with them, but they continue to break the rules. And then one day Sykes just click, and it's all over with. Sykes gonna turn when somebody say, "What? Explain what's going on. Why you do that?" one of the first things Sight gonna say is, well, I told him not to do it. So for reparations, when we get to the point where we finally click for our own conscience, we turn around and say, we asked them for reparations. We asked them to do this. We asked them, we demanded that they give us what we deserve. So now there's a certain level of, we tried everything we could. We are justified in what it is we do. But for me, that's the real value, is just, quelling our conscience, because let's just be real about it. They're not going to give us shit. They've never given us thing. Power does not concede anything without a demand. And if we don't have power to back that demand up, it's not a demand. Everybody just skips over that. Thinks that bitching out on the street protesting, that bitching in a courtroom or some event somewhere, that's not a demand. That's us bitching. We complain about it, and then it gets to a point where, okay, y'all are just bitching. And I get it. White folks tired of hearing it. I'm tired of hearing it. Quit bitching about it and do something about it, because the reality of it is, even if they gave us reparations, it's them giving us, going right back to empowerment versus not empowerment. For them to give us something is not empowering. And we've said it on here, we've said it other places, that reparations is going to come from us. It has to come from us. Everything we need has to come from us. So expect it. Call for it all you want, but understand that they're not going to give you anything that will benefit us, because they never have, they never will. It does not line up with their pursuit, with their race to be in power, to turn around and give those they want power over the keys to their own liberation. So yes, all of these things are a justified, righteous call to call them out, to go to the world stage, even the world stage. The reality of it is, in the UN, the US has veto power. So if the entire planet says, yes, give them black folks in America their reparations, we demand it. It ain't no demand, because the US will just hit the delete button and say, no, we veto that next. They've done it many, many, many times. Just like the World Court, the International Criminal Court. The US has been brought up on charges internationally, but there are no consequences. Why? Because the US refuses to acknowledge its legitimacy. It just simply says, that's not a real court. We don't acknowledge that. Imagine you get charged with some big ass crime in this country, and when they try to take you to court or arrest you or whatever, I don't got no business with that. I don't recognize your authority. Okay, you're still going to jail. But the US has the power to ignore your demand, because there are no consequences by it. Even on a global stage, the US is powerful and can do what it wants to do and ignore the criminal court and tell NATO what to do, because US has been the big dog. No matter what the voting and whatnot is, it's run all of these organizations for years, which is one thing. I don't know if he doesn't understand it or what exactly, but all this bitching that Trump does about other governments paying more on their NATO dues, spending more on their own defense, all of this type of shit, that's exactly what the power structure don't want to happen, because that's how the US maintains its control globally, is to be the one with the big guns, to be the ones that can throw money around. They've been the players, the gangsters on the block for quite some time now. So they're not going to turn around and take some of that and give that to somebody else, no matter what you say, because they don't have to. The UN can't make them do it. NATO can't make them do it. The International fucking Criminal Court, the court of the planet, cannot make the US do shit. So what do you think a bunch of niggas running around who can't decide if they're from Africa or New Jersey? If they can't decide if they're black or if they're African, they can't decide if they're individuals, but they're part of a group. Motherfuckers can't decide what clothes are appropriate to wear when they're walking up and down the street, when they go to a Walmart, having pants hanging off their ass and shit. Use some discrimination and think about it. But we can't even pursue that or do that because we have no power to demand anything. Again, it all starts with being able to define.
And I can roll with you on that, E. I think reparations is a nice idea. It's a nice idea. However, when you understand and when you really and I developed this thinking because I was debating a a self a person that considered himself to be a white supremacist when I was on leave. I was debating this guy. He was a pretty sharp guy, probably the sharpest white guy that I had met the entire time that I was on leave. He actually had some sense, and he had enough sense where I was able to actually kind of convert him from his white supremacy because he couldn't tactically debate the ideal. He just couldn't. He couldn't defend it because the information wasn't there. But to get back to the point, he did convince me of something in our dialogues and our conversations. It's basically what he just said, that and essentially if we're all running a race, then they will never feel that they owe us anything based on the fact that why would I clear all your pawns out on the chessboard just to repair your side of the board to give you a fair chance at playing chess? That's not what I did this for. I did this to guarantee I get power. My people, based on the way we developed and where we come from, believe that human beings' position on the planet is a race toward power. Because I come from an environment where it was dog eat dog. I come from an environment where even the climate tried to murder me. I come from an environment where food sources became scarce. I come from that environment. So that taught me, I survived that environment, and it taught me that if you're not racing for that superiority, you may find yourself in a position where you're dying off. So I will not do everything that I did to put myself in this powerful position, just to give you a leg up. And the people that have gotten reparations, I believe that it was only power moves. They were giving reparations to people who hold powerful positions on the planet. There are people that could cause a threat. And the word power, the root of the word, and when you understand what the word power literally means, if we just break it down to its most simple definition at all, power means the ability to bring about a result. That's all power means. And if you don't have the ability to bring about a result, then whatever demand or request, that's the best thing that I can say that you can actually give to somebody with power is a request. As he said, you can't demand anything because you have no result or no consequence if I don't do what it is that you want me to do. So there is nothing that makes me listen to you other than if I have the desire within me to be sentimental, to be sympathetic for your particular position. I truly believe the only way we're going to be repaired is what reparations means, is if we repair ourselves. We have to, and that's why black power is so important. When people hear the term black power, some people without an understanding think it's some kind of racist statement, and it's not. It's not a racist statement. Matter of fact, it's a statement that should not even have to be made if we was living in a righteous world. It's a statement that is made to build on an ideal that all people should have. And certain people that have that don't have to make the statement. Jews, you never hear Jews say Jewish power. You never hear that. They don't have to say it because it exists. We have to say it, and we have to define it, and we have to develop a system. Because black power is a system. It's supposed to be a system, and it's supposed to be a comprehension. It's not just a rallying cry. It's not just a phrase to be said. That's not what black power is. Black power is black people controlling their own education, their own political power, their own economics. That's what black power is. Black people feeding ourselves, controlling our own communities. It's us being able to do for ourselves. That's what black power is. And until you have black power, no demand can ever be made to any group of people who have power. And that's my say so and my thoughts on that. Do y'all want to build on that some more? I see you have a thought in your mind. Go ahead.
Real quick, boy, mine's real short, and you can have it. But you keep talking about chess and checkers shit. I'm going to talk about checkers because we ain't ready for chess. And if I could think of a good analogy, it'd probably just go ahead and use an analogy of Connect Four, but I can't think of one real quick. But the only way, if we're playing checkers and I have all your pieces but one, the game is technically still in play. The only reason that I would give you your pieces back, the only reason that I would let you have some of your pieces back on the board, the only reason is because I wish for the game to continue. That's it. Knowing that I'm in a position to determine how long it continues, how well you do. I can give you back one piece, I can give you back 8 pieces. I can make it a little bit more even, or I can give you just enough to shut you up. And that's essentially what it is they've done. They give us, over time, they've given us just a little bit to shut us up, but they've never yielded enough pieces to make it worthwhile. And just like Black Power, I like Black nationalism. We think that Black nationalism is the Black version because, Black Jesus, and it's always a version of Jesus, not Jesus. It's a Black version of Jesus, like Jewish. Jew, ISH is an approximation of a Jew. So they're Jewish, they're kind of Jew, you know what I'm saying? But the idea of Black nationalism gets construed right along with Black Power. People, a lot of times, I think, will run from it because we hear white nationalism in such a negative conversation or negative connotation, because nationalism is just the idea of this particular people first. For white people, that means to subjugate everything else around them. For us, because nationalism and its ideas and all these other ideologies grow out of the culture, out of the minds of the people, Black nationalism is nothing like that. All that means is Black folk taking up for, controlling, working with, for, and about Black folk. Doesn't mean we're gonna do what the Klan did. Doesn't mean we're gonna do what the Christian right does. Is still developing and working on it as we speak. It means that we put ourselves first, but it doesn't express itself the same way white nationalism does, because the minds and the culture from which Black Power, from which Black nationalism, all the rest, all of those grow from, the people and the culture are completely different from the ones that gave birth to white nationalism. There you go.
Well, you got anything on 8 before we move to 9?
We break him down real good. I hope people just peep this, because the bottom line is the whole idea of the local objectives is for us to be able to envision what it means to implement the 10-point platform. What does it mean that we're doing as Panthers? It's deep study, and all of these words are intentionally placed the way they are for a reason. They're being broken down.
All right, number 9, to develop a Black Power movement. We, Black Panther Party, scientifically and consistently organized to redeem our people and ourselves from the effects of colonization. We recognize the necessity for Ujima, collective work and responsibility. We strive to develop a Black Power movement in the local areas to develop complete constructive change amongst our people and to defend our rights. I'm gonna stop with that first paragraph. I'm gonna break them down into paragraphs. So let's build on that first one.
When we say scientifically and consistently organized to redeem our people, think of it kind of what we've been going into heavily, period. Is that everything that we're doing is intentional, and it's about us establishing power, establishing ourselves in positions of power as a people. Because just like I.E. said, and Syke reiterated, you can't demand anything unless there's consequences. So how do we put ourselves in that position? How do we realize that we have to come up out of being victims and operate from a position of power? Until we do that, nothing else matters. And that goes back to why he hit on over and over and over definition. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
And one thing we have to understand is that the liberation of the people is the collective responsibility of the people. You know, that if you look at that Ujima and our collective work and responsibility, we have to take collective responsibility and we have to put in the collective work to move this thing forward. A few people can't do it. We have to understand we have to work together, and that's one of the things that have always kept people from moving forward, is that the Black nationalists think they have the answer. The Pan-Africanists think they have the answer. The Christian liberation theologists think they have the answer. The Black Panthers think they got it. The Nation of Islam think they have it. All of us have it when we bring it together. So we have to, no matter what level we're coming from, we have to take Ujima as a principle that is required for the re-liberation of the people. It is a principle that is required. It is not something we can say, I don't like Ujima, let's throw that to the side. The collective working responsibility is a requirement if you're serious about trying to implement these objectives and get to these ultimate goals. And the ultimate goal should be freedom and liberation. It is our collective working responsibility to move to that level. That's the only way it's gonna happen and take place. Asada Shakur once in her book Asada, the autobiography of Asada, she explained, and this was the first time I had heard it and made me think about it from this level. She said that revolution was scientific. She said when you understand the revolution is scientific, then you are able to understand that there are certain principles that cannot be violated when you're trying to enact revolution. You have to understand what those principles are and then utilize or work inside of the science of those principles, of those concepts, of those ideas. It's like they use an example. The first principle of economics is there's no such thing as a free lunch. Nothing is free. Once you understand that principle and you understand that principle cannot actually be broken, anytime you get something free, you have to ask yourself what's tied to it. What is it really costing? Because everything costs. Even if it just costs you and your opportunity, and what they call the opportunity cost. Even if that's the only cost. To do this show right now, I can't be working out. So the cost of me being able to do this show is not just the Wi-Fi bill, the electronics, the monitors, the cameras. It's also the things that I'm not doing or that I'm sacrificing in order to be able to do it. Once you understand that from a scientific point of view, you'll be able to look at revolution and understand it scientifically. You'll be able to see it and move within it. The next paragraph. We as a local, did you want to build anything on that first paragraph that we went into? If I just move on, and you already know to throw that finger up. We as a local and national strive for Black unity, umoja, and Black solidarity with other Black organizations worldwide. We shall build alliances and organizations, leaders, churches, mosques, and like. When necessary, we must deal firmly and appropriately with Black leadership, quote unquote Black leadership, who betray the interests of the Black community. War, get into that for me.
It goes back to, again, realizing that we at a position where we have to develop institution, infrastructure, and architecture. And when we say holding Black leadership, dealing with Black leadership and holding them accountable, it goes back to this, people. Too often that we think about when you talk about electoral politics or just people in positions of leadership, period. We can't stop by simply just voting someone in a position, but not actually dealing with the level of accountability. Accountability needs to be happening across the board with us as a people, period. Everything we do, there needs to be some type of accountability. Right now, we're dealing with ourselves again in a state of victimization, to where we don't address accountability. We don't see ourselves having a position of accountability to our community. We still operate as individuals, like E was stating earlier. Once we recognize that we need to be building a collective, then accountability comes with that. Accountability automatically deems forth consequences for not being accountable for your actions and for what you do and what you don't do. When we talk about a movement, period, the idea here of addressing this as a Black Power movement is making it to where our people recognize that we all have a place to put, all have a position to play in a movement, which means that we are all doing this together. There's something that's going on that is driving a current, a process that we are all involved in. That's the accountability aspect. So the reason why we have this word is as a movement is because it implies that all of us are at the forefront, taking an active role scientifically, like we said in the first part of this, together to make it happen. An organization, we say organization worldwide, and we break down the fact that we're talking about what it be through a religious institution, or a governmental institution, or through our leadership. It's just defining or identifying the different elements in which power can be implemented and power must be held accountable.
All right. We are not a religion. However, all faiths and spiritual practices are respected and studied from a Black liberation perspective. We support Black liberation and salvation theology as a necessary weapon to redeem ourselves after our enemy has destroyed us. We affirm our imani, faith, in the victory of our just cause. One God, one aim, one destiny. The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
That's just drawing the fact that the bottom line is, when it comes to at least looking at the Black Power movement or Black Panthers in general, that we're not identifying by any specific religion, and we're not allowing religion to be used as a divisive tool. But at the same aspect, we recognize that religion is typically used as the most divisive tool when you talk about trying to oppress the people. And so, in closing with that, when we talk about liberation theology, and we recognize the Imani faith of victory, it is just getting our people to see do not allow anything to redivide us, to undo everything that we've been talking about up until this point. Everything that we say within the movement is all about us finding reasons to come together. Don't allow everything to get undone and diverted through the aspects of trying to break it down or trying to identify from a religious perspective that is not in line with our divine right and destiny as a people. That's real all I'm gonna say on that one.
I have a question. It says, when necessary, we must deal firmly and appropriately with Black leadership who betray the interests of the Black community. How do we do that?
The same way we call ourselves giving people power, we have to be willing to take it away. The same way that we allow somebody, in essence, allow somebody to represent us, we have to let it be known that there is accountability. But see, when that goes back to, especially as it applies to politics, that's why, to me, this is right under the aspect of reparations and compensation. Once we realize our power, once we realize that right now things are definitely within this system of exploitation are run through creating areas of profit. When we realize the power we have, especially being the world's largest consumers as Black people in the United States, when we start using that consumption to our advantage, everything else can operate from those positions, because this environment is based on being able to exploit and maximize profit. When we see that and we operate from a position of extracting and not making it feasible for there to be profit in our oppression, then that can be applied across the board through leadership. Because anytime they want to try to appease a Black community, what do they try to do? Go out and get somebody that looks like us, but plays to get the same game of the devilish environment, and even look like us, but go out and still exploit African people, African environments, which is what they tried to do with Obama on the continent of Africa. Get a Black president to go out and talk United States politics in an environment that is or a continent that is of Africa, but by him having Black skin, figured they could use him to manipulate the resources of the continent. So we have to recognize what is being done, and also, again, hold our people accountable as Black people first. On that point, I do want to bring up something that I need members of current formations of the New Black Panther Party to recognize. In their local objectives, this is not necessarily the same order. In fact, the Black Power movement was point number one on most of the New Black Panther Party's process in which the way they develop it. The reason why I put it the order I did is because the first thing I'm getting us to recognize is how education, economic power, and political power, when we first covered the three, have to do more so with creating institution, infrastructure, and architecture, which is our continuity. And the same way we do with the 10-point platform, I restructured the local objectives to where it matches the way in which these things have to be implemented in terms of how people's consciousness, so that they can have a format that makes sense. So to develop the Black Power movement was put at number 9 as opposed to number 1, because it was better and made more sense the way I saw it being implemented, to get our people to first and foremost realize that education and what education means. And then from there, developing and going into economic and resource power, and then political power. So yes, like he said, after that, now you get into the summary of developing a Black Power movement. I also want to point out that we said we used the concept of develop 6 times on 6 points within the local objectives, and we use reclaim, demand, and define all only one time. And the way those are structured within this makes sense as well, because when we talk about reclaiming, we're talking about what he emphasized when he said Black nationalism. When we're talking about a demand, we're talking about self-sufficiency. And then when we talk about defend, the one-time issues, is self-determination. So when you internalize the local objectives in the way that the Panther 48 broke them down, now you can really see that it's more to this than what a lot of time has been taught to some Panthers in their local discussion in the recruitment training about how the local objectives are applied. You come to the Panther 48 to get the in-depth aspect of how to implement this stuff so you can internalize it. It is not good enough for us to just simply memorize words on a paper, but not be able to internalize the process in which they are implemented. So I just wanted to draw emphasis on the way we structured it and broke it down to better help people recognize, especially active Panthers, recognize why it is important to study these through the Panther 48.
And I want to put something out there, and y'all can consider this a challenge. This is to any community activist, especially anybody that's claiming to be a Panther from whatever formation you come from. You know, if you want to move past Black Power being more than just some chant, some statement to say when you're marching somewhere, if you want to move to what Black Power really is, I'm gonna ask you to do a couple of things. One is three things, not a couple. Define, develop, and defend. First, define what Black Power is. Define it. Actually sit down. This could be a good political education class for some of the chapters. Sit down with your membership and actually define what this means. Then develop it. And when I say develop it, is to create any kind of building, you have to create the blueprints first. So sit down and actually create a plan. 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan for developing Black Power in your space, in your neighborhood, in your community, in your city. Create a plan. What would that look like? How would you develop? Once you define what Black Power is, and if you need some help defining it, beautiful books to read. I'm gonna give you three. Blueprint for Black Power by Amos N. Wilson, Black Power by Stokely Carmichael and Charles Hamilton, and Powernomics by what's the brother name? I can't remember the brother's name. How can I not? Claude Anderson, Dr. Claude Anderson. Those 3 books will get you a deeper understanding of what Black Power really means, not just a chant, but what it means as a system, as a political ideology. Read those 3 books if you to get some assistance in defining what Black Power means. Then develop it. Actually develop a plan to move your chapter to actually developing Black Power in your city, and then defend it. And what I say by defend it, not only be able to defend it verbally, to actually intellectualize about it and defend the need for developing Black Power, but once you have actually physically manifested Black Power in institutions in your neighborhood, what would you do to be able to defend the outside enemies from destroying the Black Power that you created? These are the ways that you need to be thinking if you're serious about developing Black Power. And those are just some ideas that I think that any sincere and serious revolutionary should be thinking about when they're thinking about Black Power.
Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Study
Dedicated to
Malcolm
all
Garvey,
political
Huey.
prisoners.
Their life was like a movie. Study Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Malcolm Garvey, Huey.
It's Gangsta
Malcolm
Grill,
Garvey,
Gangsta
Huey.
Grill,
Their life was like a movie.
Free
I
Mumia.
live, I die, I organize. Everything I do's revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should. I study Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Malcolm Garvey, Huey. Marcia Cody with the Uzi. Listening to Fela Kuti. I'm Ogun with the machete. Especially if it's deli. Got the Santos for the Hexy to protect me, so respect me. This is heavy, legendary, revolutionary. My wifey, she resurrect me when the